All right, whatever.
Okay, so does your leadership style change depending on the type of project or work you're doing?
Always, yeah.
Okay.
Without a doubt.
So like say you're doing something like kind of with more like the management side, so how do you kind of tackle that versus like if you're working with like your employees / a team?
Yeah, my supervisors I hold at a whole nother level.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's not exactly fair, but that is what it is. If you have people in charge of others, they have to be held at a higher level. If they show up a minute late, I'm going to be on top of it, and I'm not going to come with the same kind of nurturing attitude either. It'll be more direct, more straightforward with it.
Okay. So managing is said to be in like the now while like you're enforcing policies and such, and then leading is about like change in the future. So what are some ways you kind of like apply this concept to your work that you do?
Okay, so managing, from what you just told me, is a supervisor in our profession that just goes, and he just goes through the day, just dispatches, just tells out the answers, hands out the board, goes home. Leadership is those guys, the supervisors that stay after their 9-hour shift. They stay extra time to make sure everything's done right, but not only that, those are the teachers. I think leadership is about growing your team. You're going to lose people all the time, and you got to rebuild them up again from brand new. And after a while, it'll beat people down. So some people, the management side, from what you're saying, would just keep, whatever. Let's just get it done. I don't care. Don't train. Don't invest any time. Leadership, I think, invest time into that. And the biggest future you have is who works for you. Labor, like I was saying, is the biggest attribute. If you have people that are very productive, know what they're doing, and are great, and you can hold on to them, you don't even have to do your job. But it's hard to get there and maintain it. It's a constant struggle.
Mm-hmm. And then how do you maintain open and interactive communication with your team and supervisors?
Supervisors, I usually take them out. It's nice to have that. Before, as a supervisor myself, I didn't have any of it, nothing. You can't fraternize, that's just a whole nother situation you don't want to deal with. So I take them out. I'll get them a couple drinks, get them into their own element, and I won't act the same way I do at work. I'll be more of myself, and that builds trust, and that's huge for communication, and that's what I try to install with them. I also try to let them know that I am on their side. I hate to put it as an enemy kind of thing, but you always have to have an enemy. Mm-hmm. So for my other side of the fence, I go out to the meetings and I'll address in a meeting, and everybody looks at me and the board, and they don't want to talk or want to hear me, nothing. I can just see it. So I'll spit out my corporate whatever I have to do. But then after that, I'll go up to each person individually at some random parts in the day, and I'll just ask them how they're doing. Mm-hmm. Or BS up with them, and if I hear somebody went out this weekend, went to Winterfest or whatever it was, I'll ask them about it. And it might not always be work appropriate, but I'm in an isolated spot with the person, and when you get them to tell you stuff that they probably shouldn't, under that influence, and then they never hear about it again, that builds trust with them as well. Mm-hmm. And I'll do that if I have to. I mean, it's not what corporate would say would be by the book, but it's the only way to relate to people. If you keep coming to them with the robotic sentences that everybody says, there's nothing to build a team around with that.
Yeah, we definitely talked about that, management by walking around. So just kind of going around and having that opportunity for your employees to talk to you and just give them a chance rather than saying oh, my door's open whenever. So yeah, I definitely think that's a good skill.
Yeah.
So Dane Frey is said to treat their employees like family. Do you experience this yourself, and how do you make your employees feel this way?
Yeah, so it's small, it's the smallest company I've worked for. And the owners, they don't do it as much now because it's finally starting to grow. Mm-hmm. But I've met the owners. And for any company I've ever worked for, I've never met the owners, ever. And their culture is, what they want to bring out in people is more like old style, very respect driven. Mm-hmm. It's going to be more and more of a challenge the bigger they get. I see that already. It's changing with having such a big span of control going on. It's already changing, but that's what they want to enforce. That's their goals. They don't want supervisors staying there for 10, 12 hours every day. They don't want that, but you know, what you get and what you're asking for is two different things. But yeah, I see what they're looking for in that, and I do believe that they try to keep it to be respect driven and family first, employee first. It's definitely that on the employee side, like the hourly side of things.
Mm-hmm.
You see that 100%. They it's got a little kind of a bad side to it where the employees actually take too much control and they want to say what their opinion is every single time.
Mm-hmm.
It might not always be in the most productive way, but that's the kind of culture that they feed into.
Yeah, that's good. So what makes Dayton Freight stand out compared to other competitors in your opinion?
Well, their leadership, because they had such a small net group, they personally interviewed all their management for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And most of that management is still embedded there. So all the high ups have been handpicked. So they got a team. They have their team.
Mm-hmm.
They have a bunch of dedicated people that have all been handpicked by them, still implementing everything that two people wanted. So communication, I think, is one of the biggest things they have going for them. The way they get the whole chain of command to follow what they're wanting and everybody on the same page makes it a lot easier to do anything else. Plus, they don't they believe in paying well, but don't offer the amenities that some places do. Like some factories or some docks are heated and they got all this fancy stuff, but the wages are low.
Mm-hmm.
Employees don't see that. They get used to it and they just assume. So our guys are out there in the freezing cold, but their paychecks reflect that,
Yeah.
and that's what they would rather have. So I think that might have a big part of that too.
Yeah, so you basically like work hard for what you're getting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely see value in that. So where do you see this company going in like the next 5 to 10 years? And since they are expanding, do you see their like goals changing or like their values changing?
I do. I actually, they're probably going to continue on the same path they have. When I started 3 years ago, almost 4 years ago, they had 3 new terminals open up in the past 7 years. In the last 3 years, they've had 7 new terminals. The growth has always been about 10% as a company, which is really, to me, it's kind of scary. It's fast. And like I was talking about earlier, some of that span of control is going to become an issue. They're going to have to adapt with that. The two owners aren't going to be able to meet every new management employee for this. It's just going to be too much. So they're going to have to delegate it. And this company has a lot of gray area in terms of policy. That's probably going to have to get defined. It's going to become more robotic, but that's what you have to have when it's that big.
Yeah. All right, I'm good with that.